The manhwa begins with Hyeonseo Cha, who is a lawyer by profession. But she's not just any lawyer, she's a partner at the Hyeonseo law firm. This means she owns part of the firm, so she's financially stable. Tonight, she and another partner from the firm, Jeonghyeok Kim, are driving to the office for a night shift. As they drive, the radio is on, and the newscaster talks about a comet that's coming back to Earth after 5,000 years. The newscaster says, and up next, for the first time in 5,000 years, the great comet Juliet is set to revisit Earth. Astrologers say it will be the closest to Earth on the night of October 3rd. The comet will be visible to the naked eye, so many people are excited about what's expected to be Earth's biggest celestial show yet. But to everyone watching, it looks like Ms. Cha isn't interested in the news. She seems distracted and isn't paying attention to the newscaster. After the science news, it's time for the business report. The news talks about Beauty Cube, one of Korea's top cosmetic brands, which was sold at a very low price. This sale has led to a merger with Gold Stone, which is a big deal, but even this doesn't catch Ms. Cha's attention. She seems worried about something else. Noticing her unease, Mr. Kim decides to speak up. He mentions the comet again, trying to spark her interest. "Aren't you excited about the comet?" he asks. Her response is blunt, showing no interest. Mr. Kim, who doesn't give up easily, tries a different approach by bringing up her fiancé, Inho, thinking a little romantic talk might help distract her. He mentions Inho asking to see the comet with her, but she doesn't seem interested in him either. She replies indifferently about going with Inho, which prompts Mr. Kim to be direct, pointing out that she doesn't seem to care either way. She confirms his observation with a straightforward response. "But I have to play the part, since we are getting married soon," she adds, resignedly. It's 5:30 when they finally arrive at the office. Miss Cha, always conscious of time, quickly gets out of the car, walking elegantly but fast, frustrated by the long hours spent traveling. She turns to Mr. Kim and asks him to send her the files he received earlier. At the JK office, the secretary is eager to make changes to the Articles of Association. Miss Cha, feeling distressed, wishes they could get an associate attorney to handle it, but the president of JK was insistent that she do it. Mr. Kim suggests Mr. Han might be available for the task, but it's just 2 lines of procedural provisions, which seems like overkill for her skills. She tells Mr. Kim to send it over to Sol Yun, her secretary, later. As they reach the elevator, Cha quickly presses the button before Kim can even react. "Nice," she comments with a smirk. Kim, lost in his thoughts, wonders how she always manages to move so fast. Her question pulls him back to reality. Kim blurts out that everyone at the firm aspires to work under her, admiring her efficiency and skill. Cha seems puzzled by this, thinking about the negative things she's heard people say about her. Kim points out that she never makes anyone work overtime, indirectly hinting that she's overworking herself. Cha, feeling the stress, notes that it's affecting her well-being. Kim suggests delegating tasks to lighten her load and give others a chance to contribute, hoping this will help her manage better. As they part ways, Cha notes her ripped stockings and wonders if she should get a new pair, or if she has a spare in the office. Deciding it's not worth the hassle since she'll be working late, she puts it out of her mind. While looking out the window, she sees the stunning sunset, and remembers the news about the comet earlier. The radio had announced that the comet, which will be visible to the naked eye for the first time in 5,000 years, will make its closest approach to Earth on the night of October 3rd. With so many people excited to see the comet, she feels a pang of regret, as she remains stuck at work, listening to the radio describe the comet streaking across the night sky. As Miss Cha walks to her office, Ms. Sol greets her, but she's caught off guard by her own mood. She nods and enters her office, feeling overwhelmed. While trying to unwind in her chair, Ms. Sol knocks on the door to get her attention. Ms. Sol tells her that a visitor from Gold Stone is waiting in the main conference room. Cha had planned to meet the branch manager tomorrow, but is surprised to learn that it's actually their general manager, Jeonghyeok Seo, who is in charge of the Asia division. She's stunned and quickly gets to her feet, realizing the importance of the visit. Cha hurries to the conference room, reflecting on the significance of this unexpected meeting. While the Beauty Cube deal is major, she knows that a company like Goldstone handles such deals regularly. Cha feels uneasy, wondering why someone as important as Mr. Seo would come all the way here in person. She gathers her courage, knocks on the door, and enters. Inside, she finds Mr. Seo watching the news about the comet. The news reports that the comet Juliet is incredibly bright, even brighter than Venus, and will be the brightest star ever seen in astronomical history. Mr. Seo notices her and comments on how such events make our lives seem small and insignificant, though he adds that it doesn't make our daily struggles any easier. As he finishes speaking, the news shifts to a report about the merger between Beauty Cube and Goldstone. The announcement suggests that Goldstone is preparing to open a branch in Korea. Mr. Seo seems pleased with the news and compliments Ms. Cha on her work. Ms. Cha is taken aback, and Mr. Seo introduces himself as the manager of Goldstone, Jeonghyeok Seo. He tells her it's a pleasure to meet her. "I'm Hyeonseo Cha," she introduces herself, feeling uneasy about the situation. Mr. Seo, maintaining a confident demeanor, steps closer and says he's glad to finally meet her. "She's Tieng," he asks Seo. He tells her it's a pleasure to meet her. Taken aback by his statement, wondering what he means by having heard a lot about her. He extends his hand for a handshake and expresses his eagerness to get to know her. Ms. Cha, showing respect for his confidence, shakes his hand and replies similarly. Mr. Seo then takes a seat and offers her a chair, inviting her to sit down as well. As an attorney with a knack for psychology and understanding human behavior, Ms. Cha begins to assess him. Arrogant people usually fall into two categories: those who brag and those who are aggressive and want to dominate. Both types are often easier to deal with because they can't hide their intentions or hostility. However, Mr. Seo's arrogance is different. His entire attitude is more complex, making it harder for her to gauge his true nature. As Ms. Cha sits down, she asks why Mr. Seo wanted to see her. He inquires about her salary, with a tone of arrogance. She responds, questioning if he's making her an offer. Mr. Seo, skilled at psychological games, implies that she wouldn't be able to refuse his proposal. Ms. Cha, familiar with such tactics, makes it clear that money won't influence her decision. Her salary is already among the highest in the country. She explains that leaving her stable position at Hyeonseo for a new and unproven company like Goldstone is too risky. If she were to join him, it wouldn't be for financial reasons. This response seems to bother Mr. Seo. Puzzled, Ms. Cha wonders why he needs her if Goldstone can afford to build a strong legal team on its own. Mr. Seo struggles to provide a clear answer, but mentions an exclusive restaurant in the US with a high-profile clientele, hinting at a connection he wants to make. Ms. Cha grows impatient, thinking about how long this meeting will take and how she needs to send those files to JK. She keeps glancing at her watch, waiting for the conversation to end. Meanwhile, Mr. Seo continues his story. He recounts working part-time at an exclusive restaurant when he was younger. He describes seeing the restaurant manager in a private room, kneeling on the floor, and using his hands to clean up vomit from the son of a wealthy family that owned several hotels. In return for his efforts, the manager received a small stack of dollar bills as a tip, which Mr. Seo gestures to show how much money it was. Ms. Cha is still trying to understand the point of Mr. Seo's long story. She asks him directly what he's trying to say. With a smirk, he explains that the story reminded him of his own desire for someone to clean up messes for him. He adds that he's heard she's good at handling such situations. Ms. Cha is shocked by his blunt statement. Mr. Seo continues, saying it feels like a terrible situation, which triggers her anger. He challenges her with a dare and notices the frustration on her face. Trying to justify his words, he comments that the world is a tough place. Ms. Cha finally speaks up, asking if his words sound like a threat, or if she's imagining things. Mr. Seo, sensing her irritation, denies that it's a threat. Mr. Seo tries to make Ms. Cha feel that her desire for money is her main weakness, believing that she will be swayed by his offer. Ms. Cha responds by saying she isn't as focused on money as he thinks, which disappoints Mr. Seo and lowers his confidence. He acknowledges her response and then shifts his strategy, hinting that he knows she is struggling with debt. He uses this information to try to leverage her into accepting his offer. Mr. Seo seems to know everything about Ms. Cha, almost like he's reading her mind. He brings up her debt, which she hadn't shared with anyone. He specifically mentions a figure of 5 billion won, about $4 million, catching her off guard. She is shocked and wonders how he knows about it. Trying to stay composed, she asks if he did a background check on her. He casually replies that it was just basic research, as he moves to sit down. He then reminds her that he is simply making her an offer. Mr. Seo leaves his company card on the desk, emphasizing the offer is worth 5 billion won. Feeling confident, he tells her they will get along well, suggesting they both love money. Ms. Cha, seeing the card, stands up angrily and asks if that's the only reason he came to see her. He nods, and she, clearly disappointed, tells him she must decline his offer. It feels like a waste of all his efforts and resources. She bids him goodbye and leaves the room. Mr. Seo tries to call her back, pointing out that she might want to get a new pair of stockings. Ignoring his comment, she slams the door and walks out with a straight face, not even acknowledging the guard's greeting. Almost at her office, she throws the card into the trash. Sol is surprised that someone would throw away Mr. Seo's business card. Ms. Cha feels conflicted, but tells herself not to let him get to her, deciding she never wants to see him again. The day passes, and a new one begins. Ms. Cha walks through a large, flower-filled garden to meet Jae-suk Yang, the second wife of Mr. Jang, the president of JK Group. Jae-suk loves flowers and often spends time tending to them herself. It's midday, and she is busy in the garden when she notices Ms. Cha approaching. Jae-suk comments on Ms. Cha's tired appearance, concerned that she might be taking on too much work for someone about to get married. In her thoughts, Ms. Cha wants to tell Jae-suk to stop demanding so much from her, but instead, she forces a smile and says she's fine. She quickly shifts to the reason for her visit, explaining the need for money for surgery, and that they are returning to the United States, ensuring there will be no trouble. Jae-suk, appearing satisfied, stops her gardening to focus on Ms. Cha. After cleaning her hands, she sits down and mentions she wanted to talk about her youngest son. Jae-suk asks if Ms. Cha has met her youngest son before, sparking a flurry of thoughts in Ms. Cha's mind about his return from the States and potential trouble. She replies simply, confirming she remembers him. Jae-suk explains that her son was out with friends and got into a scuffle. Although Mr. Kim said he handled it, Jae-suk wants Ms. Cha to ensure there are no legal issues. Ms. Cha's mind drifts back to her unsettling meeting with Mr. Ryan, and his remark about her talent for cleaning up others' messes, making her feel uneasy. Returning to the present, she assures Jae-suk she will call Mr. Kim and check for any problems. Jae-suk appreciates this and, as Ms. Cha is about to leave, mentions hearing about her meeting with Ryan from Goldstone. Ms. Cha pauses, recalling Ryan's unsettling familiarity, and his words about hearing a lot about her. Ms. Cha realizes Jae-suk is the one who mentioned her to Ryan. In her mind, she thinks, so she was the gossip. She confirms to Jae-suk that Ryan visited the law firm yesterday. Jae-suk admits she recommended Ms. Cha, knowing Ryan was looking for a good lawyer. She mentions Ryan already knew about Ms. Cha's role in the Beauty Cube deal and asks if he wanted her to work for him, guessing he made a generous offer. Jae-suk confidently says she told Ryan Ms. Cha would never leave, even after turning down offers from the prestigious JK Group. She recalls Ryan's response, suggesting Jae-suk should treat her employees with more respect. Ms. Cha, known for turning people down, feels uneasy about the truth in his words, as she often rules through fear. Ms. JK continues, expressing disbelief at Ryan's audacity to brag about his wealth in front of her. She isn't happy with Ryan's attitude. She asks Ms. Cha what she plans to say to him, and Ms. Cha admits she is still thinking about it. Jae-suk, knowing Ryan's nature, tries to pry more details from Ms. Cha. She asks if he has already ensnared her, wanting to know the amount he offered. In her head, Ms. Cha recalls the figure, 5 billion won. She realizes that if she tells Jae-suk, she would probably laugh and question her worth. Disappointed that she can't get any useful information, Jae-suk hopes Ms. Cha will continue working with her even if she joins Ryan. She feels she deserves some benefit, having facilitated the connection between them, and expects Ms. Cha to still be available for her. Outside, Ms. Cha sits in her car for a while, reflecting. After meeting with a manipulator like Ryan and dealing with an unappreciative boss, she suddenly screams in frustration. She relaxes and hears Ryan's voice in her head again, realizing he was right about how difficult and unfair the world can be. She admits to herself that she might not be able to turn down his offer. She closes her eyes, takes a deep breath, and picks up her phone, feeling conflicted. She calls Goldstone directly. As it rings, she prepares herself. When the call connects, she asks for the contact information of Mr. Jeonghyeok Seo, the manager. She finishes the call and drives straight to her office. Upon arrival, she joins a board meeting with her partners. As they chat, one attorney points out Ryan's photo in a magazine, questioning his background and trying to get others involved in the conversation. Another partner shares details about Ryan's past, mentioning his rise from a difficult start to becoming well-known on Wall Street. A female partner notes the surprising choice of Jeonghyeok Seo as the general manager of Goldstone's Asia branch, despite the founder's reputation for racism. Rumors that Ryan might be considered as the successor are probably true, one partner says, adding that Koreans should feel proud of his achievements. Another partner sitting near Ms. Cha disagrees, calling him a money-obsessed bastard, and turning to Ms. Cha to ask what Ryan wanted during his visit. Ms. Cha responds that it wasn't anything major. Curious about the visit, another partner questions why someone like Ryan would come in person instead of sending an assistant. Ms. Cha, sensing more questions, stands up and explains that Ryan is very interested in the Korean market, and came to thank them personally for their role in opening the door. This leaves her colleagues puzzled. After talking about the bonus, the partners wonder why their CEO hasn't mentioned it. Ms. Cha, smiling, says the CEO will tell each of them personally. She heads back to her office, sits down, and takes out a tablet to unwind. Her phone rings, it's her fiancé, In-ho Jo. She answers, and he asks if she's still at the office and if they can meet. He's on his way and wants her to come down in 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, she meets him in the garage and gets into the car. In-ho looks upset and can't make eye contact. She asks why he wanted to see her, and if something is wrong. In-ho suddenly says they need to break up, leaving Ms. Cha stunned. She asks why, feeling she deserves an explanation, especially with their wedding just 2 months away. In-ho avoids eye contact and explains that he realized he wasn't okay with the situation after seeing his brother take over the company and leave him with nothing. He needed a partner who could support him, but now, with his shares gone, he feels unable to marry her. Ms. Cha is baffled by his sudden change of heart. She points out that he never showed any interest in the company before and now claims she's a burden. In-ho tries to justify himself by saying he thought he was fine with it, but now he sees he isn't. He apologizes, trying to make it seem like it's his fault. Miss Cha, still trying to understand, asks if he's seeing someone else. In-ho reacts angrily, feeling insulted by the question and expressing his frustration with her suspicion. In-ho slams the steering wheel in frustration, and Miss Cha thinks he should be begging her to stay, but instead, he's just being stubborn. She decides to end things and steps out of his car. In-ho calls after her, saying he wants her to know his feelings were real and that he really loved her. Miss Cha stays silent, feeling disappointed. She thinks to herself that even his last words are pathetic. As she walks toward her office, her phone beeps with a message from Mr. Ryan. It says, "I'll see you in my office at 7 p.m. tomorrow." Miss Cha finds some small relief in the message, despite her troubles. She thinks about how Mr. Ryan's comment about feeling like shit matches her own feelings, and it feels like she's not alone in her frustration. In-ho, Ms. Cha's ex-fiancé, is an illegitimate child, so he was never considered a successor to his family's company from the start. Since he was born out of wedlock, he wasn't really seen as a candidate for taking over the business. Marriages among wealthy families are often more about business deals than love, so the fact that his family didn't object to him marrying Hyeonseo Cha, a struggling lawyer, shows he probably wasn't expected to be a successor. In-ho met Miss Cha during a critical time, when she was handling the Hyeonseong pharmaceutical stock market manipulation case. He pursued her very aggressively and openly, clearly interested in her despite the circumstances. Ryan is waiting at his desk, eager to review the report on Mr. In-ho Jo. When the secretary arrives, Ryan greets him and asks about the findings. The secretary explains that Mr. Jo was an illegitimate child, so he was never really in line to take over the company. His family didn't view him as a potential successor, which is why they didn't oppose his marriage to Hyeonseo Cha, a poor lawyer. Their relationship was notable because he pursued her very aggressively during a high-profile case. Ryan is excited by this information. Since he's about to negotiate a deal with Jo's company, he suggests they consider discussing the receiver issue with Mr. Jo. The secretary is taken aback and points out that Mr. Jo, not the company president, is not the usual contact for such matters. He worries that bypassing the president could lead to complications, especially since they haven't even established a solid negotiation framework yet. "You need all the cards you can get for a negotiation to go smoothly," Ryan says in response to the secretary's concerns. The secretary still isn't fully convinced and points out that Mr. Jeonghyeok Seo seems very committed to the deal and might not back down easily. Ryan counters that he's not afraid of someone who's overly committed and that they are just as dedicated. They are determined to make their efforts worthwhile in the end. The secretary finally agrees with Ryan. At that moment, the door opens, and two young women walk in. One carries Ryan's briefcase, and the other has a tray with the payment for the report. Ryan walks over to the girl with the tray, takes out his card, and compliments her, saying, "You look great in that suit. I'd love for you to help me pick out a suit next time." The girl is delighted by the compliment and responds eagerly, "Of course, sir." The other woman hands the briefcase to the secretary, and both women bow as they say goodbye. As they leave the office, the secretary mentions the rare comet due to appear the next night, and requests to leave early or on time. Ryan, however, says he has a meeting with Hyeonseo Cha at 7 p.m., and won't be able to accommodate the request. The secretary is surprised by Ryan's confidence that Miss Cha will accept the offer. Ryan assures him that he has a strong track record with deals. The secretary then shares details about Miss Cha's background. After her father's company went bankrupt, he disappeared, and she was sent to a shelter at age 14. Her uncle, who had severed ties with her father, became her guardian, but only sought to steal her father's remaining money and flee. Consequently, Miss Cha missed the chance to renounce her inheritance and ended up burdened with substantial debt. You can imagine how tough her life must have been. The secretary's comment about Ms. Cha's hardships reminds him of his own struggles, which prompts Ryan to take the car key from him. Surprised, the secretary agrees to leave work on time the next day, understanding that Ryan's reaction is tied to past difficulties. Miss Cha is working when her phone rings with an unknown number. She feels anxious, suspecting it might be her father. Although she has kept in touch with him, he has been in hiding due to a large debt. She takes the call in private to avoid being overheard. When she answers, her father's voice comes through after a moment of silence. She's startled to hear from him, as his calls usually signal trouble. He tells her he's just checking in, which is a relief for her. She asks her father if he's okay, and urges him to be honest if there's a problem like last time. His voice sounds weak, and he tells her he's just worried about her wedding preparations. She can almost picture him looking dejected and ashamed. She then tells him she has decided to call off the wedding. He is stunned into silence. She adds that she sent him money for this month, and he apologizes before ending the call. She reflects that he always says sorry, and she wishes he could understand that she doesn't resent him. What she wants most is for him to stop hating and blaming himself for her misfortunes. As she heads back to her office, she gets a message from Mr. Ryan asking for her advice on an issue with Executive Director Mr. Gyeong Jang. He wants her to call him as soon as she can. The message makes her think of Ms. JK, and the dark shadow representing Mr. Ryan. She responds with frustration, feeling that she always has to clean up unpleasant situations, and will never escape them. She hears his voice in her mind, reminding her of her debt, which only makes her frown. She wonders why he keeps appearing in her life like this. Mr. Ryan sets up a meeting with Ms. Cha at a fancy bar and waits for her to arrive. When she walks in, he greets her. She's upset because he changed the meeting location twice, without warning, and doesn't seem apologetic. She asks how his meeting went. He says it went well, thanks to her. He apologizes for the sudden change in plans and invites her to dinner to make up for it. He pours her a glass of wine. Out of nowhere, Miss Cha brings up the money. She asks if he was serious about the 5 billion won. He asks if it wasn't enough. She replies that it's too much, and says she doesn't understand or believe it. With a smile, he assures her that he's not someone who deceives people. He tells her she should have more confidence in her own worth. Miss Cha appreciates the compliment, and he laughs, saying she doesn't need to be grateful. He explains that he doesn't make bad business deals and believes she is worth the 5 billion won. He adds that they are not looking to make a quick profit and leave, but are planning to stay for at least 10 years. Ryan says they don't need to maintain a good image, and that hiring a whole law firm for legal matters is part of their plan. Ms. Cha realizes he wants to buy her services with the 5 billion won. She thinks he's out of touch. Ryan asks if she just cursed him out in her mind. She's shocked and asks what he means. He apologizes, explaining he heard the news about her from a meeting with Mr. Inho-jo. He says he feels sympathy for her situation, but is also a bit glad. He adds that if she had married Inho-jo, she wouldn't have considered his offer. Miss Cha reminds him that she hasn't accepted his offer yet. Ryan insists she needs the money, and implies she was about to marry someone she doesn't love just for financial reasons. He pushes the agreement toward her, telling her to stop hesitating and sign it. Miss Cha calls him by his name and sees through his persistence. She takes the agreement and stares at him, feeling conflicted. Ryan tells Miss Cha that she's had more than enough time to think about his offer. He warns her that if she doesn't sign the contract now, she won't get another chance. Miss Cha takes a sip of her wine, feeling frustrated and incredulous. She thinks to herself that she can't believe she's in this situation. Trying to steady herself, she decides to sign the document. She asks for a pen, signs her name, and hands it back to Ryan. He's thrilled to see her sign the contract and is excited about working with her. He extends his hand for a handshake, saying he looks forward to their collaboration. Miss Cha is still uneasy, feeling like Ryan's comment about them working together implies there's more to his interest in her. She stands up, feeling uncomfortable with how Ryan made it seem like they are on equal footing, and she leaves the bar. As soon as Miss Cha exits, Ryan's secretary walks in. Ryan sits down and mentions that a rare astronomical event is happening tonight, something that only occurs once every 5,000 years, but he's stuck working instead of enjoying it. He expects the secretary to help with his salary negotiations for this year. The secretary is unsure how he can assist, saying he doesn't have the necessary influence. Ryan picks up the signed document and comments on how he just spent $5 billion to hire a single, relatively unknown lawyer. He stands up, adjusts his suit, and confidently states that he has never failed to recover an investment. He then instructs the secretary to set up Miss Cha's office exactly as she wants it and to meet all her demands, even if they seem unreasonable. Ryan believes that the more she has now, the more satisfying it will be when he eventually takes it all away. As Miss Cha heads home, she notices everyone working on the road is staring up in awe. She looks up and sees the long-awaited comet streaking across the sky. Her phone vibrates with a new message notification. She checks it and sees a credit alert showing $5 billion has been transferred to her account. She feels a huge sense of relief and happiness, letting out a deep sigh. For a moment, she can hear every conversation around her. People are saying things like, "Wow, is that it? I thought it would last longer." Miss Cha hears these comments and thinks to herself that the comet, which only appears once every 5,000 years, seemed to end quickly. Despite the big change in her life, she feels strangely empty. She can't believe how easy it was to escape her previous troubles. Miss Cha is busy packing up her things for her new job when she hears Jeonghyeok Kim calling her name. She pauses and turns to him, feeling a bit guilty. Jeonghyeok looks upset and asks if she's really leaving. He's hurt that she didn't give him a heads up about her departure and expresses frustration. He warns her that the new job will involve a lot of dirty work and suggests that Goldstone, her new employer, will take advantage of her and then discard her once she's no longer useful. Miss Cha acknowledges that her previous job wasn't spotless either, but points out that her new role is very lucrative. She explains that she's taking the job for the money and admits that she knows people have negative things to say about her, but she feels she has no other choice. Jeonghyeok asks Miss Cha if Inho knows about her decision to leave. He's curious about what Inho thinks. Miss Cha pauses for a moment before admitting that she and Inho have actually broken up. Jeonghyeok is surprised and asks why they ended things. He wonders if Inho dumped her for someone else. Miss Cha quickly clears that up, saying she was the one who ended the relationship, not Inho, so there's no need to overreact. She explains that while Goldstone may not be the best company, it's not terrible, especially since Mr. Seo, who's only in Korea temporarily for the Beauty Cube deal, will be heading back to the head office soon. She says this as she heads out of the office. Meanwhile, Mr. Seo visits Jeonghyeok Kim, the manager at Goldstone's Korea branch. Mr. Seo is reading from a note and discussing an oral agreement to extend the bond's maturity date until they finish the final stages of clinical testing. Jeonghyeok seems surprised and a bit confused by this. He asks Mr. Seo if he's aware of why he's in the country. Mr. Seo confirms that he knows, but questions why Jeonghyeok thought it would be okay to make this decision. He jokingly asks if Jeonghyeok started a charity foundation without telling him. Mr. Seo isn't in the mood for excuses. He stands up, walks toward Jeonghyeok, and shows his frustration clearly. He wants to make sure that Jeonghyeok understands how important it is to be responsible and follow the proper procedures. Mr. Seo finishes his meeting and tells Jeonghyeok that it's time for him to step down from his position. As he walks out, his secretary is waiting outside. The secretary comments that losing the position must hurt, especially since Youngjin held it for a long time. The secretary then asks who Mr. Seo plans to appoint as the new manager for the Korea branch. Mr. Seo ponders this for a moment, and the image that comes to mind is Ms. Cha. If you want to see what happens next, drop a comment, or give a thumbs up expressing your interest in a part 2. Your comments and likes helps determine if you're interested in really seeing the next part. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, ciao.